Okay, so two things happened there in quick succession. Something that will never get old about seeing a rock land on someone's head. Hi folks, I'm Matt Easton of Schola Gladiatoria channel and also Schola Gladiatoria Fencing Club. I'm essentially a medieval and historical fighting aficionado and expert, if you want to call me that. I'm also an antique arms and armour dealer, and one of the other things I do is I study the original historical artefacts, the arms and the armour. So I'm a former archaeologist myself, and currently I do work with Windlass Company Replicating Swords and the Royal Armouries, looking at original arms and armour and then creating perfect one-to-one replicas of those. And today we're going to be looking at some gameplay, some battling, some fighting from Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, looking at the arms and armour. I'm going to stop right there. So I'm really impressed that they have people standing in what looks like a guard position. So in fencing or any martial arts, it doesn't matter whether you're looking at HEMA, so historical European martial arts, which is what I do, or whether you're looking at Japanese, Korean, Chinese, whatever. Usually you hold weapons, or indeed if you don't have a weapon, you tend to have certain stances and positions that you fight from. So I like the fact that they do have thought out and specific guard positions shown. And then that first blow that comes in, he does a pretty conventional parry, as we'd call it, on an inside guard or cart, if you want to use sort of 19th century fencing terms. You can see that they consulted with people who know about historical combat, and I know that the team that work on Kingdom Come have absolutely consulted HEMA experts on this. Right, okay, I really like the detail there and the use of the left hand. So, you know what? I've got a medieval sword here, you know, as you do. So one of the things that I think not everybody realizes is when we're using swords, especially if you're just using a single sword by itself, we'll often use the spare hand. So it's great to see that you can use it for grabbing the other person's hand or arm, manipulating their body, even punching them. I wasn't too happy about that cut though, and there's a reason here. Now we're going to talk about the armour. So the guy is dressed in kind of late 14th century style armour, as far as I can see, which is a bassinet helmet with an attached aventail, it's called. So that chainmail around the neck, that's called an aventail. Now, you wouldn't be able to cut through that. You could stab through it, but you wouldn't be able to cut through it. So I'm not that happy about the cutting move specifically shown against the mail because it wouldn't go through it. Although I like his guard position, it's kind of weirdly wide. There is a guard in the Italian systems that'd be called posta di finestra, which means the window guard, and usually it's held closer to the head. The problem with holding the weapon wide is it increases your reaction time. Say someone attacks to this side of my head, it means that I've got to move the sword further to get it over there. So to be honest, this actually isn't technical stuff. As soon as you get people sparring and fencing and someone's actually trying to hit them, you'll notice that a wide position like this very quickly becomes a narrow position like this because they're trying to move as quickly as they can to either attack the opponent or defend themselves. But for gameplay purposes, I can kind of understand why maybe that makes it clearer to see. Okay, so two things happened there in quick succession, which I really like. First of all, a pommel to the face. A lot of people fixate on the blade, but they forget the fact that everything here is a weapon and everything on the rest of your body is a weapon as well. So you can punch, you can kick, you can wrestle, you can throw. Hitting someone with a pommel, which is where we get the expression to pummel someone, is far more effective than punching them with your fist, although this guy's got gauntlets on, so that would make it more effective. But a pommel is, you know, it's not sharp, it's not pointy, but it's roughly equivalent to the hammer in your shed. Not going to kill you usually, but it will open a person up for that follow-up thrust. And I really like the detail that it was a thrust as a finishing blow. In this period, 14th, 15th century, in armour, thrusts are king because thrusts can go in gaps between armour or indeed against chainmail or mail, they can actually go through the armour. The fact that it's thrust through is really good and realistic and historical. You wouldn't be able to cut through it, but you could thrust through it. And that's what happens here, which is great. this is an interesting fight because it's asymmetrical. We're not armed the same way. So we've got our opponent has what we call an arming sword. It's called that because it's the sword that you arm with, which means get dressed, essentially, when you put on your armor. We, the players, are using a flanged mace, called that because it has flanges around here which are designed to concentrate the energy but also bite into armor that we're hitting. And we've got a shield. Now, I have to say, if a person's got a large shield and the other person doesn't, they've got a massive advantage. So on paper, the person with any kind of hand weapon, even if it was just a hammer with a shield, will have an advantage over someone who's just got a single sword because the shield is such a game changer. It's why people carried them for centuries and millennia. So although I really like, the guard positions and the way that they're moving, it does look like it's been slowed down, and I would kind of like it to be dialed up. At the moment, it looks a little bit like slow motion taking turns. I like what they're doing, I just don't quite like the speed they're doing it at. Right, I like that more, that quick flurry. So that looks more like fighting speed to me with those flurry of attacks from the mace. I also like the variety, and I like the fact they have the thrust in there, because although you might go, oh, well, the mace doesn't have a point, so you can't thrust with it, but you can thrust with anything. You can thrust with a walking stick if you like. So a thrust like this into someone's face, because it's an open-faced helmet, is going to be very effective, more effective than a punch. Smashing someone in the face with the point then opens them up to a hit somewhere else. And I really like they have that hit to the back of the leg. I wonder if they got the idea for that from talking to bowhurt or full contact armored fighters, because this hit to the back of the leg is quite favored in armored fighting because it's where you don't have very much armor. So just looking out at that scene, it's actually beautifully done. We can see an encampment, we can see baggage train, wagons. I also love the fact that we can see the liberal use of pavises or pavises, which are large rectangular shields, but essentially a large shield which you can completely hide behind. They're a bit like a door. They've got all of the key elements of Holy Roman Empire warfare visible in here. The baggage train, the encampment, obviously the soldiers, but the large pavises at the front for the soldiers to advance behind. In terms of how they're advancing, I have to say they're quite slow. We can't go back in time. We don't have a time machine, and we don't know how quickly they advanced on enemy walls, but bows and crossbows only really have an effective range of 250 yards for the most part. Some bows can shoot further than that, but for the most part, that's the danger area, is that 200 yards between you and the enemy. You want to cover that 200 yards in a fairly rapid, not running, because you want to be behind your pavises and you want to be coordinated. I don't think they'd walk incredibly slowly while being shot at. I think they would probably do it at a brisk walk. But anyway, let's see what happens next. So one other thing that's missing here is, why aren't they shooting back? So generally, if you're attacking a fortification or a ship, one of the priorities is to try and clear enemy defenders, it's covering fire, to clear the defenders from the walls if you can, or at least get them to get their heads down. An immediate way that the attackers could reduce their casualty rates is to be shooting back.
Now I'll show you. Dismiss through the gate!
There's something that will never get old about seeing a rock land on someone's head. Obviously not in real life, but in an animated and fun recreational way. But, the fact that this person had a bassinet, this type of helmet on with an aventail, if a large rock hits you on the head, that's still a lot of energy hitting you in the head. So, it wouldn't cave in their skull, but it very likely might knock them out or, concuss them or damage their neck. So yeah, large heavy weights, always effective. So I've got to be honest, so far, this is the one thing which is making me really want to play this game, because I want to drop rocks on people's heads. This looks absolutely hilarious. I like the fact that there's the focus on trying to shoot the guys with the ladders. The game changer will be, number one, if the gate gets chopped in, so that's what the rocks were for, and number two, if those ladders come up against the wall, you've suddenly got loads of people coming up over the wall. And actually, this, again, I think is one of the great overlooked things from historical warfare, is throughout history, the predominant way of getting into an enemy castle or fortification was with a ladder. You don't need high tech, you don't need trebuchets and catapults and Greek fire, and all you need is some ladders. If you have enough people with enough ladders that are long enough to reach to the top of the castle walls, well, then they're going to be in your castle. So I love the fact that ladders are prominent here. Maybe the Pavis guys should be standing in front of the guys with the ladders. You know, it's what I'd do. Stick a shield guy in front of that guy. But anyway, it's the right idea to try and shoot the people with the ladders. So I just want to comment on this kind of slow-mo movement. I'm really surprised by how slow the bots essentially move. They walk slowly, they swing their swords slowly, they climb up ladders slowly. I think it all needs to be sped up a little bit. They just look very, very sluggish and slow-mo in all of their movements, which I find a little bit off-putting. In terms of what they're actually doing, it all looks pretty good.
Take that! Jesus!
I just love the fact that they have put guns in this game, because it's so overlooked in a late medieval setting. And it was a game changer for warfare at this time. The advantage of guns in this period is that armor won't protect you for the most part. So the powerful nature of gunpowder means that you can shoot a projectile through armor that would stop many other things. It would stop all hand weapons pretty much, and would stop most or all crossbow bolts and longbow arrows. Whereas a firearm can be powerful enough to just blast through. In terms of showing how the loading and the firing works, I would put this at about 7 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty good. They don't really, in my view, show all of the steps. They're simplified. Now, I do understand why they do that for gameplay purposes. If it was taking you 30 seconds to load, it would probably be really, really boring. Not at all effective in this close combat situation. And that's important as well.
Take that!
So based on what I've seen, I definitely want to play this game. It looks incredible. Clearly very, very well researched. The armor is all historically correct for the period, beginning of the 1400s essentially. The weapons are all accurately modeled. Even the guard positions, not always, but most of the guard positions are quite good. They're sort of historically inspired, even if they're not perfect, and I would tweak them a bit. I guess the question is about the gameplay, and the fighting does look a bit slow-mo to me, and I don't really understand why that would be the case. There are other games in this genre, Bannerlord for example, where you can move at realistic speed, so I don't understand why this looks quite slow. Of everything I've seen here, I would love to see the combat speed in close combat increased, but overall it looks like it has huge potential. Massive kudos to the historical research that's gone into this.
For more from Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, make sure to check out the first 43 minutes of gameplay, 8 details you shouldn't miss, or 8 developer tips for surviving. And for everything else, you're already in the right place with IGN.